Hi everyone, Jim here with Great Books, Big Ideas. It's Friday, December 6th, 2024. Time for our Friday Reads reading update. I have been very busy with reading. Things seem to be slowing down here with the holiday season. Had a nice Thanksgiving. My kid came down to visit and we had a nice 4 or 5 days to spend together. Nice small Thanksgiving dinner. I hope your Thanksgiving was nice. And I hope you're enjoying your holiday season here as we get into December. I have been finishing books like a madman, and you may recall, some of you have been following the channel, I had a bit of a reading slump a couple months ago. That is a dim memory now. I have just been like going to town, maybe because it's getting to the end of the year and I want to finish a lot of books. I'll do an end of the year roundup, but yeah, good success there. So the big news is I finished Aristotle Volume 1 in the Great Books of the Western World set. And this was quite an achievement because I realized I've been spending 10 years with this volume, and it's just taken me forever, especially to get through the logic books, which were so dense. But in the last several months, I've made tremendous progress. And I raced to the finish line here. So I finished Metaphysics, I finished On the Soul, and I finished the set of short physical treatises, which I'm counting as a book. And that includes the works on Sense and the Sensible, on Memory and Reminiscence, on Sleep and Sleeplessness, on Dreams, on Prophesying by Dreams, on Longevity and Shortness of Life, and on Youth and Old Age. So I have a whole video about this, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time sharing my thoughts about Aristotle, but I have to confess I did a little jig when I got to the end of this volume because I was so happy to finally be through it. And that has not stopped me from moving on to Volume 2 in Aristotle, Great Books of the Western World. And there is a whole set of biological treatises in this volume, and I've started reading History of Animals. So and I'm making like excellent progress. I'm already 66 pages in to this volume, and there's a few works in this that I'm going to skip over because I've read them before, including Nicomachean Ethics and Politics and On Poetics. But after I'm through all the biological treatises, I'm going to read the Athenian Constitution and his rhetoric. So my hope is, as a TBR plan, is to get through this volume, hopefully by springtime. And I'm really looking forward to putting Aristotle away for a while, but one thing that's impressed me, as difficult as some of the books I've just finished reading, including especially Metaphysics, as difficult as those were, the biological treatises, even though biology isn't really my thing, this History of the Animals is much easier reading. He's doing a lot of cataloging of different animal types and body parts and so forth, and it's very impressive what he was doing for that time period. I've read in a reference work that I have here at home that even Charles Darwin was really impressed at what Aristotle accomplished in his day in terms of biological typologies. So I'll be spending a lot of time reading about animals. Also on my ebook reader, Kobo, I finished this book, Firefly Magic, Heart-Powered Marketing for Highly Sensitive Writers by Lauren Sapala. Lauren Sapala is a YouTuber. She has a lot of videos about personality types. And this was a freebie that I got for signing up to her newsletter. And it was a very quick read. And it gave me some very practical guidance for how writers, especially writers who are self-publishing, can kind of organically market their works. And it was interesting because she wove in a lot of her personal experience into this. She herself is a writer as well as a teacher and a coach. So kind of classify this as self-help reading, not a genre I go to all that often, but it was a freebie, and it's something I'll go back to as I think about ways to sort of promote my own writing. So that's a finished book. Only took me a couple days to read it. Also, lo and behold, when my wife and daughter were out thrifting over Thanksgiving break, they found this at a thrift store. It's published by Penguin. It's by Renee Barron. What Type Am I? Discover Who You Really Are. And it's funny because this is exactly what this kind of stuff that Sapala talks about on her channel. And this was published in the 90s, and I basically read this in a day and a half. It contains a Myers-Briggs personality test, and you can, respond to the questions, and then there's descriptions of all the personality types. So if you're curious, if you know anything about this, when I tested, my number one personality type was INFJ, closely followed by INFP, so which I think this means introverted, intuitive, feeling, judging, or introverted, intuitive, feeling, and perceptive. There were a couple other close ones. In terms of the introversion and I think it's the feeling categories, my responses to the questions were way definitely in favor of those types. The other two categories, it was a very close call as to what I landed at. So it's fun to think about that stuff, and this was just simple read, but it's kind of fun if you see this around and you want to pick it up in a used bookshop. It can be fun maybe to go through the questions together, something that the family or friends can do, and sort of a social occasion. But anyway, you can learn a lot about yourself and how to also deal with people who are other personality types from yourself. So that was fun. Nice find. Let's get on to some active reading that I've been doing. So Redwall. Yeah. So I'm up to chapter 14 in Redwall. So, still really getting started, but things are heating up here. The Abbey is being besieged by the evil rat Clooney, who's our sort of deliciously evil type of antagonist. The more I read, the more interested I am in this book, so I'm having a lot of fun. Good escapist literature. I went back to You Must Remember This. This is Joyce Carol Oates' novel, published in the 80s, I believe. And this one is a signed edition that I stumbled into in the local used bookshop. And I got it for something like $6. It was such a great deal. Anyway, I'm about 106 pages into it, and we've hit some major plot points here. And I'm just continue to be impressed at Joyce Carol Oates' ability to set the scene, to sort of evoke this early 1950s upstate New York environment. So rich in details. And, she's sort of layering things in, and you're just getting such a sense of place and such a sense for these characters. And I'll be interested to see what she does with it. And now that the plot is really starting to move forward. I have continued to make progress in Jorge Luis Borges' collected fictions. I'm currently in the Artifices collection of 1944. And I forget where I left off with this, but I have read The Shape of the Sword, The Theme of the Traitor and the Hero, Death on the Compass, The Secret Miracle, and 3 versions of Judas. I have 3 more stories to go in that collection, and then I'll move on to his 1949 collection called The Aleph. So, nothing earth-shattering with this in these later stories that I've been reading, but they're all good. I like Borges. we'll do a better roundup when I get further into the collection, or when I finish it. I'll talk about some of my favorite stories in here. But yeah, a lot of fun. He's always intellectually stimulating. Other reads. Okay, let's talk about Toni Morrison, Song of Solomon. I'm making good headway now. I'm about 100 pages in, no, 81 pages in, but I continue to be really impressed with this novel. The way she's like introducing us to these characters in the family, Milkman and Macon and Guitar and Ruth and all these other characters who are living in this town in Ohio. And yeah, I'll have more to say about this when I finish it or get through it, get farther into it. We did hit one sort of milestone plot point where the son has now confronted his father for being abusive to the mother, and he's sort of now in his 20s, I think. So I don't know exactly where this is all headed, but I'm into the ride that I'm having. Like, it's really, really compellingly written, precise, just moving along at the right pace. Looking forward to like digging even deeper into this one, especially now that I'm through like all that difficult Aristotle stuff. This is a book, I think I mentioned this last update, John Ruskin, Unto This Last and Other Writings. So I'm pretty impressed with Ruskin. I'm liking what I'm reading so far. It definitely has a tendency towards the purple prose that was maybe more popular in the Victorian age than it is today, but he's really good at it. So I've read The King of the Golden River, which is a little fairy tale that he wrote, excerpts from The Stones of Venice on the nature of Gothic, which was an interesting, it seems to me, very sort of unique perspective on what Gothic art and architecture is from the medieval ages. And then I'm currently reading excerpts from The Two Paths, and in particular the chapter on the work of iron in nature, art, and policy. And this seems to be like part of a lecture that he gave. So that's where I'm at right now. And pretty soon I'm going to be getting into the centerpiece of this collection, which is Unto This Last, which is a real, maybe Ruskin's most famous book, or the most enduring book. But again, usually read this at night as I'm winding down for bed, and it's pretty good. What else? Let me get back to my ebook reader. Okay, so on the ebook reader, I've been really popping around a lot, like I sort of jumping around between like 4 or 5 different books. So one book I picked up that has been like really in the background for the better part of a year is The Adventures of Augie March by Saul Bellow. And I'm now 6% of the way through that book. I'm sort of just, for some reason, got curious to go back to it and give it another try. And yeah, it's really, it's pretty good. I don't have much to comment on because it's too early, but definitely like this very sort of vibrant, boisterous story of growing up in Chicago, Illinois in the early mid 20th century. We'll see where he takes it, but lots of pictures of family life and different characters, and just to sort of, reminds me a little bit of the Joyce Carol Oates in that regard. It seems very, making a good effort to like bring you into that time and place. Continue to slog through the restored Finnegans Wake by James Joyce. And every now and then I pick up my skeleton key to Finnegans Wake by Joseph Campbell and Henry Morton Robinson. Okay, Finnegans Wake is just impossibly hard. I mean, it's ridiculous. Like 99.5% of readers would have no patience with this novel. And yet, it's to me, it's like kind of doing a Sudoku or, a crossword puzzle. It's kind of like when I just want to like exercise my reader's mind for a little bit and just glean whatever I can off of it. I'll read a few pages of Finnegans Wake. I'm over halfway through it. This is my second time through the novel. The first time through, I read it on paper. This skeleton key is helpful, but here's the thing. This is like impossible to read too. I mean, it's a real sign of how impossible a book is when the skeleton key to it is really hard to figure out. But it's really fascinating. I've only read, I'm only 46 pages into the skeleton key. I'm not quite keeping pace. I'm farther into the novel than I am through the skeleton key. But, for some of you, this might be helpful, but even this isn't an easy read. Also, I picked this back up, which is The Great Ideas Today, 1970. So I've read all the 1960s volumes in that series. And I went back to this, and I'm currently in this very, very long entry on linguistics, which essentially it's an introduction to modern linguistics. You can get quite an education from this. It's very dense, and I can understand why I put it down because it's very dry, but I want to get through the rest of it. I have like a mild interest in linguistics, but I'm not an expert in it at all. Just a little trivia point is my very first class in college as an undergraduate, 1982, fall of 1982, was Introduction to Linguistics, taught by Dr. Joseph Augie, who was a really good teacher, very entertaining. He had his own textbook too, which is, sort of very much a simplified view of linguistics, but I learned a lot in that class. And just very happy memories, because I know that very first day was a morning class. I got into that. I didn't know a thing about linguistics, but he kind of put me at ease, and I felt like, oh, I'm in the right place. I belong here. I like college. I'm liking this. So anyway, you learn a lot about like modern linguistics theory in that entry. So I want to make progress on this Great Ideas Today. Maybe I'll finish this by the end of the year and move on to 1971. So what else? Here's a little free library find. And I'm not sure I'm going to read it. Ian Hargreaves, Journalism, A Very Short Introduction, published by Oxford. I like these little Oxford short introductions. Interesting series, written by experts in the field, but trying to make it accessible to the general reader. And they published a ton of these. They really okay, here's like their list of very short introductions. There are like 411 of these, at least at the time they published this. That's a lot. That's a lot of stuff. So you probably can find a topic that you're interested in getting a short introduction to. This was originally published in 2003, but then it was revised in 2014. But that's now 10, 11 years out of date. So I think journalism has changed in the last 10 years. So, and I did a little skim of this book, and I think by and large I'm going to agree with what the author has to say about this subject. I have a lot of pessimism about journalism. Maybe this guy's a little more optimistic because I think he comes from the field. But when you think about where journalism is headed in the last 10 years, it's not a really pretty picture. So I'm not sure if I'm going to feel like reading this would be a waste of time. But I might give it a chance, but definitely not a keeper. I'll send this back to a little free library once I'm done reading it or skimming it or deciding that I'm not going to finish it. What else? Okay, finally, Oh, back to my ebooks. So the other two books I'm reading on the Kobo Reader are another book by John Ruskin called Praeterita, or Memoirs, and that's very readable. That's one I downloaded off of I think archive.org. A lot of John Ruskin you're going to have to find that way, because I think quite a bit of his work is out of print. But he was very popular in his day, and all this stuff's in the public domain. So that's something I'm reading through. And the other one, and this is just, the masochist in me, is Negative Dialectics by Theodor Adorno. Adorno was I think he was a German speaking. I'm not sure if he was from Germany, European, we'll just say, mid 20th century, affiliated with the Frankfurt School, kind of known as like a Marxist philosopher. I don't think we want to pigeonhole him quite as a Marxist, but he's like in that tradition. And I've read some other stuff by him. He is very difficult, but there's something like intriguing and interesting about him, and some other stuff that he's written that I don't like much at all. This is a very famous book by him, Negative Dialectics, which I think because I'm reading all the Aristotle and stuff, and I'm also reading the Schopenhauer, it's just like this kind of scratches that philosophical itch. And one thing I noticed, it's a PDF file, is as dense as it is, it's sort of written, at least so far, in very sort of short chunks, like little sub-chapters. So I feel like you literally can read like 2-3 pages, and then you got to get to a stopping point. So I thought, in bed at night, and I'm just trying to get sleepy, like this might get something out of this. We'll see. We'll see if I stick with it or not. And yeah, that's sort of like the ebook stuff. And then I wanted to also mention I'm going to be participating in a reading challenge. This is launched by RobertG, reader of books. So Robert has a video, which I'll link to in the show description, called the Roman Emperor's Reading Challenge. So it's like reading biographies, histories of the Roman emperors, and you can participate in as many of these emperors as you want. He leaves it pretty open-ended. And I thought, I got tagged by it. Thanks, Robert, for tagging me on it. And this is up my alley. I think after reading Plutarch this year, I'm primed for it. And I decided this would give me an excuse to read a Roman author that I haven't gotten around to reading yet, and that is Suetonius, the 12 Caesars. So I think this is going to be my participation in the reading challenge, will be to read this book, and every time I finish one of the biographies, I'll do a little video on it. It starts with Julius Caesar. Now, Robert goes to great pains to point out that we shouldn't classify Julius Caesar as an emperor. And I agree with that. So I won't do a thing on Caesar, but I did read that biography. So I've already like 54 pages into this, and but it's in the book. I read through and I enjoyed that biography. But the first one I will do is Augustus, the first Roman emperor. The other emperors in here are Tiberius, Gaius, Caligula, Claudius, Nero, Galba, Otho, Vitellius, Vespasian, Titus, and Domitian. So that's about 11 or so Roman emperors that I look forward to chatting about on the channel, and we'll see what other people doing the reading challenge have to say. It's an exciting project, and I think it's a great idea, and it'll be fun to hear people's perspectives on all the different books that they're reading. This, by the way, this Suetonius was translated by Robert Graves of I Claudius fame. So I know it's going to be good that way. And the introduction is, it was actually revised with an introduction by Michael Grant, who's a name you see often in Penguin Classics. So off to a good start with this. I will not be talking about Augustus probably till after the new year, but yet another new book on the pile. Is that enough books? I think so. I can't help myself. I'm always have my finger and I'm running out of fingers to put into books, into pies. But yeah, that covers most of it. What have you guys been reading? And how are you finishing up the year? I hope you're enjoying this holiday season. And I look forward to chatting more about these books as I finish them or pick up new ones to read. If you're new to the channel, I hope you become a subscriber. Thanks. Bye-bye.